By now, you've all heard of Italian Wine Unplugged 2.0, the latest book published by Mama Jumbo Shrimp. It's more than just another wine book. The fully updated second edition was inspired by students of the Vinitaly International Academy and painstakingly reviewed and revised by an expert panel of certified Italian wine ambassadors from across the globe. The book also includes an edition by Professore Attilio Scienza, Italy's leading vine geneticist. The benchmark producers feature is a particularly important aspect of this revised edition. The selection makes it easier for our readers to get their hands on a bottle of wine that truly represents a particular grape or region. To pick up a copy, just head to Amazon.com or visit us at mamajumboshrimp.com.
Welcome to the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm Cynthia Chaplin, and this is Voices. Every Wednesday, I will be sharing conversations with international wine industry professionals, discussing issues in diversity, equity, and inclusion through their personal experiences working in the field of wine. If you enjoy the show, please subscribe and rate our show wherever you get your pods. Hello and welcome to Voices. This is me, Cynthia Chaplin, and today I'm very pleased to welcome Hermione Ireland to Voices. Hermione joins us from London, where she's the managing director of Académie du Vin Library. She's an experienced sales and marketing director with social media marketing expertise and a proven track record of reaching all kinds of niche audiences. So I'm very glad to have Hermione here. I met her a few weeks ago in London at Italy on a Vinitaly roadshow event. So very nice to have you with us today. Thank you for giving us your time.
You're very welcome, Cynthia. It's lovely to be joining you. Thanks for asking me.
Well, let's talk a minute about Académie du Vin Library. The company was started by Steven Spurrier, who, of course, is very famous for his Judgment of Paris wine competition that became a famous movie, Bottle Shock, which he started in the 1970s. And we saw California wine beat a French wine in a blind tasting. And L'Académie du Vin began as a series of informal courses that combined sort of amazing wines, expert teaching in a very genial, jovial, relaxed atmosphere, talking about, an important and serious subject matter, but without, making it dull and boring. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. How did those Academy classes that Stephen started turn into Académie du Vin Library?
So he started writing some books basically to help his students to go along with the courses. So he wrote one which was a whole wine course. It was the essence of his wine, of the classes that put into a book, but based partly on an existing French book as well. So he did work with a couple of key French wine educators. So he published 3 or 4 books. He was mostly focused on French wine, of course, because that was mostly what people were talking about. And to be fair, he was in Paris. And so he'd published under the Académie du Vin Library back then, and then it had gone away again. The Académie du Vin itself has been resurrected. Stephen resurrected it with Marc Nadeau in Toronto, particularly. They were looking at courses in London, and they were just about to start courses when COVID happened. And then, obviously, sadly, Stephen left us. But he had also, before that, was having lunch with Hugh Johnson and Ben Howkins, and they all went to school together a long time ago. And they were talking about these wonderful old wine books. They weren't thinking of their own books at that point, wine classics. And what a shame it was that they were no longer in print. And they said, well, we need to do something about this. And so Stephen thought he would resurrect the Académie du Vin Library. And reached out to Simon McMurtry, who has been our founder and our chairman for the last 3.5 years. He's the WSET trustee chairman, and he also used to run Laithwaite's, but he's also a publisher. So that's how we came to be. Things have evolved quite a bit since then, but that was basically the germ of the idea in 2018.
Which 2018, of course, is just a few minutes ago in terms of wine writing time. So it's interesting that Académie du Vin Library hasn't been going for all that long, but as you said, the seed of the idea started back in the 70s. And And I love these wonderful, very British, but also very old school wine things of, oh, just having lunch with Hugh Johnson. Very nice. But it's interesting because, of course, the authors on your list are very starry, including Hugh Johnson and Oz Clarke and Andrew Jefford and people like that. So Stephen was obviously friends with many of these people, but what was the philosophy behind this particular book list, aside from the fact of resurrecting books that were not in print, but, this stable of authors, this book list, how are you balancing out traditional wine writing with modern wine writing, traditional topics, modern topics, renowned wine writers versus unknown writers? How are you addressing all these subjects now? You've only been going for 5 years. What's happening?
Well, it's a very good question, and it's something that we wrestle's too strong a word, that we discuss on a regular basis. The reality is that actually we diverged quite quickly from Stephen and Hugh's original idea. I mean, yes, we launched with Michael Broadbent's wine tasting, but we did that because it's a seminal book on learning about tasting wine, and he was the man who formalized basically wine education. And yes, we republished The Story of Wine, which is again Hugh's seminal book. Hugh has written quite a lot of books, and obviously the Atlas, which is published by Octopus, is a wonderful reference work. But The Story of Wine, I think, is one of the most important books in the wine canon, and also of appeal to a lot of people who are interested in history. But I think we have quite quickly started to publish new books that haven't been published before. Fiona Morrison's wonderful 10 Great Wine Families, she actually wrote in Flemish, but it had only been published the year or so before, so we published that for the first time. Ben Howkins' Sherry is brand new. Andrew Jefford's Drinking with the Valkyries, which we've just published, and is the book I absolutely adore. It is a collection of writings he has written in Decanter and World of Fine Wine and Noble Rot over the last 10 or so years, but he's updated all of them, and none of this has existed in a book format before. So what our philosophy basically is to publish wonderful wine writing and to tell stories about winemakers, wines, wine regions. And I suppose it's important to us, therefore, that we are working with people who are very good writers. They don't have to be established, but by definition, it's hard to know how good somebody is as a wine writer until they've got some writing chops on them. So, have they written another book, or are they writing in print or possibly digital already? So I think we have these wonderful anthologies that are the brainchild of our editorial director, Susan Keevil. So we've done 3 so far, on Bordeaux, on California, on Champagne, and we do Burgundy this October, and we will carry on with more. And those books are a wonderful place for us to try perhaps some slightly younger authors who haven't got as much publishing background already. I mean, they are full of excerpts and pieces, sometimes by people who are no longer with us. So there's a piece from Evelyn Waugh on Champagne, for instance. But there are also lots of pieces commissioned from new writers. I mean, On California was full of, because so many of the California wine writers are women, which is wonderful. So more than 50% of the writers in that book are female. I'm very keen and conscious to going forward to try and commission more books from younger, less established writers, people from all sorts of different backgrounds, different types of people. But it's definitely true to say that we started with some of the classics, and we had to have Stephen's own biography on the list, and frankly it needed re-editing. It had only been published a year or two before. So yes, we've got Stephen and Oz and Ben, but I hope we will be publishing the wine writers of the future, the next generation's Hugh Johnson, whoever that may be, as long as they are good wine writers. I mean, in terms of modern subjects, we've talked about looking at natural wine and biodynamism. We'll get to them. We can only publish 2 or 3 books a year. It takes a lot of work. So we have to, it's always about juggling commercial, choices, really, I think.
I completely agree with that. There's a lot happening in wine, which is why those of us who work in the sector love it so much. We never get bored. There are these classic writers, but there are new themes, as you said, natural wine, biodynamic wine, wine being made in amphora, all of these sorts of things are going to be hot topics, and in some cases already are. So it's nice to know that you're aiming, Académie du Vin Library sounds quite classic and traditional. So it's nice to know that you have a vision for some more modern and younger writers, and an appreciation for women writers who I think have been, somewhat overlooked in wine writing, with the exception of Jancis Robinson and people like that. But it's nice to know that you're hoping to grow that list and grow that stable of writers to make it more welcoming, and also to give your readers more interesting and new material, as well as the classic standards that we all need to start our wine career with. The Academy is interesting to me because it's clearly more than just a publishing company. Your mission statement for the company is to build a community of like-minded winos. I love that. Who can exchange news and views and keep up with the latest developments in the wine industry and participate in exciting wine tasting events around the world. So I'm wondering, what else does the Académie du Vin Library do? What sorts of activities are you providing? Who are your clients? Who are your followers? As we kind of have alluded to, there are these classic writers in your stable who are, for want of a better word, a little elderly at this point. So, what's happening now with clients and followers? What activities are you doing? How are you going forward?
Are you enjoying this podcast? Don't forget to visit our YouTube channel, Mama Jumbo Shrimp, for fascinating videos covering Stevie Kim and her travels across Italy and beyond, meeting winemakers, eating local foods, and taking in the scenery. Now, back to the show.
So, my background is publishing, but I very much feel, having joined the Académie du Vin Library, I wasn't there at the beginning, that I am much more immersed in the wine world, the wine industry, the wine trade, than the publishing industry. And I love it. I mean, my goodness, what a welcoming group of people you all are. So the first book came out in 2019. I didn't join until 2020. So they had quite a few events that year. They had sherry, wine tasting, 10 Great Wine Families, and in Vino Veritas. But by the time I joined, we were already in lockdown. So we partner a lot with wine schools around the world. The Napa Valley Wine Academy is our biggest single partner. We love them. We did lots of wonderful webinars. We had 700 people, I think, join for the first one that we did with Hugh Johnson. And in the UK, we do that sort of thing with the Wine Society as well, for instance. And while webinars have obviously slightly dissipated since people go out and meet people, actually, they're still a fabulous way of getting to people all over the world who don't have to be in London, for instance, and they don't cost anything for the attendees, and they're just convenient. So we've done a lot of webinars. We'll continue to do those. I mean, I think in terms of the community, so we have an online magazine called Vinocity, and that is really, back to your previous question as well, that's one of the places where we're really able to give a platform for young wine writers. But that's also where we're able to surface to create content that is topical, timely. It takes a year to put a book together. So by definition, you're not necessarily going to be talking about up-to-date news in your books, but our magazine does that for us. So what we want to be is a place for really high quality content, even if it's not all in book format. So we're going to start doing wine courses this year, which I'm really excited about. It's basically re-establishing actually the Académie du Vin. So I'm working with the same courses as Marc Nadeau is offering in Canada, and his part of the business is the Académie du Vin. So we will do more events. We did a fabulous launch last summer for Hugh's memoirs at the Vintners, and we had a wine tasting, and he was in conversation with Margaret Rand. That was lovely. We will continue to do different types of events, whether they're wine tastings or lectures and discussions. And it's not easy. Most of our authors are in the UK. So by definition, if they're international, if we're working with people internationally, they might be digital. But Hugh's actually going to be in UC Davis in 2 weeks' time, and he's doing a wonderful event there with Warren Winiarski, Elaine Chuck-and-Brown, I think Claire Tooley, who's an MW, and Kelly White. And they're celebrating on California, which obviously we launched during COVID. And that's going to be in person. And I think he's also going to do something at the Napa Valley Wine Reserve the next night as well. So, if you're listening to this in California, the week of the 10th and 11th of March, you might be able to see Hugh actually in person. So yes, with lots of different things going on, I would say. And it's wonderful to be able to meet our audience in person. I love that more than anything.
That's fantastic. I love the crowd that he was going to be with in California. Elaine Chukan Brown is a real icon for me. She's been a guest on Voices, and she's doing so many interesting things. So I like the fact that, having taken Stephen's original idea and having this list of very traditional authors, you are mixing it up with this very diverse group of people, taking it away from England, going to the States, going to other places, I hope, in the future.
Yeah.
And it is tough, it's definitely tough, but I think, we did get used to having online things. People are very happy to drink wine in their pajamas when no one can see them on the camera and learn wine. I certainly am, teach and learn in a way that's very accessible to people in other time zones, people who are a little bit less, advantaged and don't have to pay all of this money to travel and to stay in various places to get the same knowledge. I mean, we are opening up a longer wine table by doing these things. So I'm really happy to hear that about Académie du Vin. And I know, as you alluded to, your connection to wine is not a tiny one. You've got a WSET Level 3 award in wines. So how has your own interest in wine driven your work with Académie du Vin Library? You were a publisher before for many, many years. You've been in the industry. How did your love for wine get you to here, and what are you doing with it in terms of Académie du Vin and driving it forward?
So I'd always loved wine, because why wouldn't you? And my father, gave me nice wine, not fabulous wine, but nice wine growing up, and I always appreciated it. But I didn't ever know anything about it properly. I'd never done any formal training. I did publish some other wine books. I was at Dorling Kindersley for quite a long time as a marketing director, and we published Robert Parker's large books. I worked with people like Robert Joseph and Tom Stevenson. But as you were alluding to in the introduction, actually at Dorling Kindersley, DK, it was all about niche passion areas, which had always been the thing that interested me. So when I was approached for this job, the pitch was the job is to run a small wine book company, and I'd always worked in a big publisher. I'd had senior roles, but I wasn't running them. I had no ambition or expectation of running one of the big publishing companies. So the idea of working with a small dedicated team of people in the area of wine, I mean, if they'd asked me to do the same thing about gardening, I would have been much, much less excited. So, but it meant I had to build my wine sort of knowledge, get my wine chops sort of, developed quite quickly, because I didn't want to feel like a complete idiot. I was going to be tasting amazing wines and, working with lots and lots of people over the industry. So I did the level 2 in lockdown, which I enjoyed but found quite hard. I got to this age where I used to think I had a very good palate, but I was I couldn't actually identify half the time what I was tasting. I knew it, but I couldn't quite pinpoint it. And my 16-year-old son, at the time, he was 16, has a very good palate and is interested in food and wine. And I kept on handing him the glass and saying, what does this smell like? And that sort of got me through. I did the level 3 in the classroom at Bermondsey, at the sort of headquarters. And I just loved it, being in a room with people where you're tasting and testing each other and, checking what have you got and, what have you got from that. I absolutely loved it, and it just basically ignited a desire to know more and more. So once my son's gone off to university in September, I'm planning on starting the diploma, which I'm nervous about because, I got distinction in the last 2 and I worked hard, but the diploma is a much bigger kettle of fish, and I worry about my memory, not remembering anything. I mean, that's the hardest thing about wine, I think, is just the huge size of the world of wine. So I'm not one of the wine experts in the business. Both Susan, our editorial director, and Gyongi, who is our head of marketing, she used to work at Liberty. They're both hold diplomas. They know a lot more about wine than me, but I'm a very, very eager learner, and I think doing some more formal education around that it just helps with my confidence. Really, it makes me feel like I pay more attention, and I feel more equipped to work with and talk to all the amazing wine people that I do. I don't know how much it drives what I'm doing, other than I want to be good enough for the Académie du Vin Library. I suppose I want to keep up with it.
I think it's an important story to tell as well, because the world of wine does have space for people who are learning at a different stage in their life, a different stage in their career. I've raised 6 children. I continue to learn. My children have all grown up and gone to university. And I understand that moment of when you suddenly have a bit more time to yourself. It's a big lie, because believe me, your son will come right back home. But it's very interesting. It's one of the few professions in the world, and we don't talk about this very often, that doesn't shut people out, when they're at a different stage in their career. It actually welcomes you in. You have more time to study than someone who's 24, 25 and, needs to make a living as working on the floor as a somm or doing whatever they're doing. So I think there's a golden aspect to being able to really immerse yourself in wine knowledge and wine learning. And of course, we all need books, which is where the Académie du Vin comes in. But taking on a learning role and holding it hand in hand with your publishing role is, really fascinating. And I think it's inspiring. There are a lot of women coming back into the workforce who are, of a certain age. Their children have left home or whatever. Maybe they never had children. They worked very hard and now have time for their passion. And I think the fact that wine makes space for those people is something we need to talk about a lot more than we do. So I'm excited for you, and I wish you well with your diploma.
Oh, thank you.
But it's interesting because we've been doing a lot with Académie du Vin, which some of our listeners may know about, but in case they don't, Italian Wine Podcast is currently enjoying a really fun series on Tuesdays, where my colleague and friend Mark Millen has been interviewing some of your famous wine authors for his Food, Wine, and Travel podcast. And I just wanted to ask you, from your marketing expert point of view, how do you see the potential of podcasts for promoting books? And what do you think the future of, actual print book sales will look like?
I think to me, podcasts are one of the 3 or 4 basically press routes, media routes to a consumer audience. I think podcasts are fabulous because whether they're short, sort of 15, 20 minutes, or they're long, they're 2 or 3 hours, you've got people who are willing to engage. They choose to engage with this content. So they're maximum concentration. If you've got an interview or a review in a newspaper, you've got people skimming through the pages and maybe they're not very, you're capturing a small percentage of the people who've actually got the newspaper. I mean, even with wine magazines, maybe they just want to have the wine magazines for the reviews, but podcasts are these wonderful, concentrated, focused conversations. So I think, and as it happens, Mark has done a most beautiful job. My authors are fabulous. I cannot tell you how privileged and lucky I feel to work with these people. I mean, they're very nice people. They write very good books, but you put them in front of a microphone and oh my goodness, these writers are often shy, retiring people. I don't think that applies to wine writers. Even Andrew Jefford, who is a retiring gentleman, he's the most beautiful speaker. So this series of these 6 wonderful podcasts, you're getting to hear these people in a different way from reading their books. I think so from a marketing perspective, working with organizations as impressive as Italian Wine Podcast, you guys have, one of the most listened to wine podcasts in the world. So for me, as a small publisher with a tiny marketing budget, working with partners like you is absolutely essential. The more times I can get the message out about my books, the better. There was a marketing adage that pre-digital that you needed to give people a message 6 times about a product or a service in order to get them to seriously consider, purchasing. These days, in the digital world where we are bombarded with content all the time, it's something like 28 times. So the luxury of being able to do a podcast with you where people are spending, half an hour potentially listening and also getting a couple of messages. And we've done a special code for Mark's podcast. That's fabulous. I think in terms of the future of books. So there have been several things, obviously, that have happened in the last 15 years. There was the rise of ebooks, and everybody predicted the death of print, and that's not what happened. They got to their plateau, they got to their level, and it sat there. So what we now have with ebooks is a format, particularly for people who are heavy readers, particularly for like crime and romance and sci-fi potentially, where you can buy lots and lots of books very cheaply. And I'm sure there are some wine book readers who prefer to have digital, whether it's from an ecological perspective, not carrying stuff around. And most of our books exist as ebooks. And there's an accessibility element for that, because you can make the print much larger. The more recent change, or sort of the growth in the business, has been audiobooks. Now, audiobooks saw a massive boom about 5 years ago, so it wasn't COVID, it wasn't pandemic related. And that's particularly been subjects that men like to listen to. Men apparently like to listen to audiobooks more than women, and I don't know if that's true for podcasts as well. So wine is a good area for audiobooks. We've only recorded 2 so far. We're in the middle of recording our 3rd one. They're a lot more expensive to produce than ebooks, but so I think, talking about things on a podcast, clearly the people who are listening to us right now, or to Mark's podcasts on Tuesdays, are big fans of audio format. So I would hope that they might want to listen to Hugh's Story of Wine or Stephen's biography. The next one that we've got coming out I think it's the Bordeaux Club, but my plan is to work through quite a lot. I know Andrew wants to record his own book in the next year. Print books are doing pretty well. We had a very good autumn. I think the retail, landscape has obviously been changing. Amazon has become a massive beast. They did very, very well in COVID, not surprisingly. But I think the bricks and mortar stores, I'm less sure about what's happening at Barnes & Noble in the US, but I think Waterstones is not going anywhere anytime soon. Our books are available there and in Barnes & Noble. So I urge people to, if they like print, keep buying them if you can from the high street. Don't give all of your sales to Amazon. And that's me pinning my colours to the mast. But I think it's really important to support and support your independence if you can as well.
Well, I think the name of your company lends itself to that philosophy. Académie du Vin Library, which brings to mind a space where people can collect books, refer to them. I certainly, and many of my colleagues and friends in wine, we all have wine books. I know I listen to wine podcasts as well, and I'm sure I will check out the audiobooks that you're producing. I just made a note to myself here on my little trusty notepad. But I think that concept of library is a nice word to keep in the title of your company, because it does remind people of the benefit of having a print book that can be referred to, that you can annotate and go back to again and again. So it's a good balance of having many different options. Ebooks. I have a Kindle, of course. I read late at night with a light on my Kindle that doesn't disturb my husband while he's sleeping. Audio books and podcasts are definitely a big part of my life. And thank you very much for saying that podcasts provide focused conversations. I think that was a wonderful comment. I'm going to get that printed on a t-shirt. But print books, I do think, they're very nice things to also pass on to one's students or one's children or families and friends, to be able to hand someone a book and say, this book meant something to me, is important. And I think probably something for the ages. So, I work with my company here and edit books. We've just published a couple of books that I've been part of. So I am in favor of print books. And all of the things that are sort of satellites around print books. So it's nice to hear that, with you at the helm, Académie du Vin is going to, not run away from that traditional library aspect of an actual print book you can hold, but also include those people who don't have time or don't have money. Books are expensive.
Yeah.
People can access your material on audiobooks and ebooks and hopefully more podcasts like Mark's and mine. So thank you so much, Hermione. I can't thank you enough for coming on. It was really great to chat with you. And thank you for explaining everything that Académie du Vin Library is doing.
Thank you for having me. It's been lovely talking to you today.
Thank you for listening, and remember to tune in next Wednesday when I'll be chatting with another fascinating guest. Italian Wine Podcast is among the leading wine podcasts in the world and the only one with a daily show. Tune in every day and discover all our different shows. You can find us at ItalianWinePodcast.com, SoundCloud, Spotify, Himalaya, or wherever you get your pods.